Hi, this is James French.
And this is Ted Dimon.
Welcome to the Awareness Connection. This is a podcast where we talk about mind-body awareness, health, and human development. Today we're going to be talking about the very interesting topic of the levels of being. This is a little departure for us, but it's very much involved with the way that you look at things, Ted, and the theories that you've constructed around the subject that you fleshed out. So would you like to give, why don't you give listeners a introduction to what we're going to be talking about today?
I think maybe a good starting point is breathing, because we spoke about that last time. People remember that we talked about the problems of breathing and how to improve upon it. And I think it's a good example of where we can apply a method to improve breathing. But if you really look at the subject in depth, we're not just simply employing a method to improve breathing, but ultimately we can actually understand how breathing takes place and raise the process of how we breathe to a more conscious level.
Mm.
And the idea that you could do that means that you're not simply, consciousness is not just some kind of a tool that you could use to improve on something, which is how it's often looked upon, like the mind-body connection is somehow like a switch you could turn on that will make you feel less stress or something. But it's actually a new stage in development.
Okay.
And if you're going to frame consciousness as a new stage of development, then now we're talking about evolution as something that isn't just about, it's not just about us being clever and being able to pay attention in some way that helps us, but it's about it's about evolution containing the ability to actually go to a new level. And that's a different view of evolution that has to, where we're looking at evolution as a kind of a process of transformation into higher states. And that's controversial. It's interesting. That's what I think we should,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we'll be talking about evolution. We'll be talking about the notion of stages. It's something that we've spoken about before on the podcast. The notion of stages, of levels, they're kind of like synonymous. The notion of building upon something in order to reach something new. Maybe the notion of complexity as well.
Yeah.
The notion of synergy. I think that belongs there. And the notion of emergent function or emergent properties.
Yeah.
I think that fits in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear what you have to say, James. If you have something to say about it, I'm happy to contribute.
Yeah. Well, we were speaking before we started recording, Ted, and you were mentioning, just the fact, for instance, that our bodies are made of cells. That's a really interesting thing when you think about it. A cell is a somewhat self-contained unit. Especially if you look back far enough, in the planet's history, you say that there was a couple of billion year period where the Earth's surface was just covered in single-celled organisms. They were self-contained. They might have been feeding on each other. They might have been doing whatever. They had their own processes, their own ways of living. And yet we are composed of cells, each of which is sort of this individual life on its own. But yet those cells have, combined, or they've cooperated. I don't know, whatever the word you want to use. And we're no longer just a collection of cells. We're a new organism. So something has happened. There's the level of being of a cell, and then there's the level of being of an organism. Yeah. Something that's composed of cells, but really is much different than a cell. It's not just like maybe you can say that a cloud is much different than a water molecule. And I guess that's a different level of being, you can say. But when we're talking about living organisms, I mean, it's, the transformation is incredible.
Yeah,
Almost
totally.
beggars imagination.
Yeah, and when you say, if you say a human, so if a cell, it's not just that they're added up into a living thing. A cell is alive, so we're made up of trillions of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't refer to ourselves as trillions of cells. We refer to ourselves as humans as living being. Each human being, each conglomerate of cells as a living thing.
Mm-hmm.
So. How do you explain the fact that we're a living thing made up of smaller living things?
Yeah.
And when you look at, philosophers who've spoken about that, they're mocked for describing, this is, I think, of Aristotle, who said that we're composed, or an animal is a living thing that's composed of smaller living things. And if you say that, or he said something like that, but if you say that, he's mocked for saying that we possess life that's composed of smaller life. And yet it's factually true. You can
Yeah.
make fun of it all you want. You're really just making, because you don't like his language. He described life as soul or anima.
Yeah.
So he said, we're composed of nutritive or cellular or, more basic life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also composed of animal life. And then there's another level he gave to humans, which was rational. We'll talk about that. But people mocked him for saying that there were two souls contained with a human being. But if you think of soul in the way that he actually meant, which was life, we
Yeah.
really are smaller, bigger life form made up of smaller. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Like life's principle, instead of trying to staple on a later concept of soul onto his earlier
Yeah.
theoretical writings. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or, And then if you say a human being, then he said, well, humans are, not just animal, soul, comprised of, he said nutritive, like more like plant life, or it could be cellular life.
Mm.
But on top of that, we humans are different than animals. And because we are able to think rationally, and that he considered that to be another kind of soul.
Mm.
And so he said we're actually made up of three souls. I actually would add a fourth, because I think we have a latent ability to become more highly conscious,
Mm-hmm.
which I would describe as a higher form of soul or being.
Yeah.
That would be 4 levels. And the reason why I think that's important to get a handle on is because, again, if you think of consciousness as simply something that we could utilize because we happen to be clever primates that can think in some way, if you think of consciousness as just a way of breathing better or feeling better or lowering stress, then you just have in my view, a kind of therapeutic limited method.
Yeah.
But if you can actually raise the process of breathing to a more conscious level, then you're talking about actually utilizing and developing that 4th conscious level. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It really broadens the context. Really, lends like a nobility to what you're doing,
Yeah.
to what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah.
Well, this is a thing that I don't know if it's a tangent. This is a thing that you speak about often, and it's a distinction that I think is subtle, and we've spoken about it in a couple of the podcast episodes, where, for instance, if the claim is that the human body plan has a functional design, which we've spoken about before, and that body design gets that functional body design gets interfered with, and it doesn't work as well. It leads to all kinds of physical problems. If through education, through learning, you're taught how to restore that thing, you're not just like you said earlier in this podcast episode, you're not just returning to an earlier state. You're not returning to a more infantile state, to put it like psychoanalytically. You're not returning to a childhood state. In getting back what you had before through educated adult means, you're actually bringing about something higher level. Even if you're returning to normal previous function, you can only do that through educated conscious means. So your ability to return is a function of your higher level of awareness, your higher consciousness. It brings about a higher consciousness.
Yeah. Like, to give an example, quieting the mind. I
Quieting
mean,
the mind.
one level, quieting the mind is just getting back a little more of what we have as children, where we're not so preoccupied with thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because young children don't have a complex narrative field of consciousness.
Yeah.
But you're really not returning because, first of all, the ability to pay attention to yourself at all, and the recognition that you're preoccupied or upset or worried or thinking too much, is already of a much higher order of complexity than any child possesses. But on top of that, the fact that you could quiet the mind as an adult at all means that you're doing something at a much higher level of complexity than a child. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not, like you said, you're not just getting back the mind of a child,
Yeah.
but you're doing it at a conscious level, which now gives you a control over it that you don't have as a child and didn't have earlier as an
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's not the same as, it's not just lowering stress or feeling more, relaxed or applying a method. It's really
Yeah.
a new emergent conscious property.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that ability is not predicted by evolution. So, we could talk about this, but that's not something that is explained in normal evolutionary terms, in my view.
Yeah. Yeah.
That although I believe in evolutionary theory, I think we are in fact a product of nature, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are humans, like other animals, came from earlier forms and 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 modification. We're a modified form of some earlier common ancestor to the chimpanzee, etc. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that. I think that's factually true, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's the whole story,
Yeah.
because you see properties emerge in life that aren't explained by the earlier levels, because
Yeah.
life itself is complex and builds complexity.
Yeah. It builds complexity. We can speak about what you mean by complexity, because I know it's a it's a suggestive word, but I know that you mean something even more than complexity.
Yeah.
And we have you take a pair of scissors and cut up the newspaper, and you drop the clippings on the floor. That each clipping is complexly related, and you can trace all the lines, and you would have a highly complex figure. But what you're saying is something totally more than that. It's like life has, is it like a transformational capacity? It's like it's almost like stages and levels
Yeah.
is what you're meaning. Like some new quote unquote higher thing comes about. You know?
Yeah. 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 Because I always felt that if evolutionary theory was strictly true, then how is it possible that we could make breathing conscious? I can understand that in evolution, in the normal view of evolution, that in the same way that a bee has remarkable instincts, Darwin commented on that. He thought the instincts of bees was an amazing quality that you could see in nature, and he remarked on this in a lot of instances.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way that a bee possesses amazing instincts and they see light differently than us, let's say, you could say that primates become clever, and that's another property you see in evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Cleverness is another strategy for survival. And given that notion, I can understand that you could say, well, we're clever and we're good with sounds. That's one way that we're clever. So we could put them together in clever ways to make music or to hear music.
Yeah.
I could kind of understand that. And that's the concept that, we have these sort of byproducts of evolution can be utilized to make art or music or whatever. But that doesn't explain to me how you can be aware of yourself thinking, but not only aware, but aware in such a way that you could actually learn to quiet the mind. And
Yeah.
if you're really disciplined about it, quiet the mind in such a way that you actually become aware at a higher level. Now, it's stretching, credulity to say that that's simply a byproduct. It's
Yeah.
clearly an emergent quality that isn't predicted by anything before.
Yeah.
And humans possess many of those qualities,
Yeah. Yeah.
like insight, the ability to quiet the mind, the ability to use your um, attention to gain insight into the workings of your own mind,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to gain control over functions like breathing.
Mm-hmm.
These are not simply byproducts. These are new and emergent properties that seems to be a quality of life that builds up into new forms.
Into new forms. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the evolutionary theory says, well, that's just coincidence. That's just life, which evolution can't explain. Evolutionary theory does not explain how life came about. It
Right.
presupposes life,
Yeah.
but say, well, life comes up with these new properties. So we see cleverness in primates. We see the ability to see light in a different way in bees or something. But it's not life is, but all of that is simply a product of randomness. That's the usual view.
Mm-hmm.
And randomness is another property of entropy, or things just breaking down all the time and randomness occurs. But that's not what I see. What I see is randomness on the one hand,
Mm-hmm.
and building up on the other hand is opposing forces.
Yeah.
And is the building up is the ultimate building up that counters entropy.
Yeah.
And that's synergy. Synergy seems to counter entropy.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
consciousness seems to me to be the most synergetic quality of all.
Yeah. 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 Like you can speak about like what you said before. Um, we're sitting here and we're clearly aware. I'm talking to you, but then you can you can you can look at yourself, or you can I don't know, take charge and take command in a certain way, the result of which is a transformation of consciousness. You know, some like when you said before, like the quieting of the mind. This might be called a transformation of consciousness, and then there are insight levels that would legitimately be transformations of consciousness, like the distinction between subject object dropping away or something like this, and
Yeah, yeah.
and past that, they would be transformations. The analogy would be the transformation of a collection of cells to an organism. That's how different. And you're saying that consciousness itself is the most synergetic, the most transformational, for lack of a better word, thing out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it seems that to work that way, and again, if applying a method to breathing improves breathing, but
Mm.
breathing can actually be raised to a more conscious level, then what we're really doing is we're saying consciousness is not just some sort of usable quality that helps us to feel better,
Mm-hmm.
and then which we elevate by saying that there's some mind-body connection. Consciousness is actually part of uh, our potential or potential level of transformation
Mm,
that has to be included in a full conception of educational development.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really part, in my view, it's part of what's possible for humans educationally.
Yeah.
And when we say that consciousness is, when we put it in the realm of, mind, body, medicine, or well-being or health, we're diminishing it. That's not doing full justice to its
Mm,
real potential.
mm, mm.
And,
Yeah.
and, and conversely, education is not fully realized as a subject because we haven't fully acknowledged the need to the possibilities of transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. If we haven't fully recognized the possibilities of transformation, then we're kind of misunderstanding what education is. You know,
Yeah.
like real education, like it's oh yeah, guys, like we've got the capacity for not just and this is another thing about evolution and levels of being. What we're talking about today, like um, is that like the the transformation is not like metamorphosis, like in the old Greek sense where like someone turns into a tree, and then or like someone will get transformed into a rock or a flower, or it's just sort
Yeah.
of like, well, you're this now, and then you're this, and then you're that, and then you're this. What you're talking about is a stage level almost. It's a I don't know if I want to say hierarchical, but like
Yeah.
transformation, meaning new capacities coming
Yeah.
about, new forms, and not just new forms, but we were talking earlier today about one of the things about a transformation of consciousness is that it seems to broaden the field of consciousness to include what was previously not seeable, not viewable.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
talking about, you know, the stage of, like what you call involuntary action, the stage of conscious control. And this is going to be part of your, like an upcoming book where you spoke about the process of you playing a piece at the piano, trying as hard as you could to, to not like interfere with your physical system. And there was a big process involved, but you wound up, your consciousness expanded in such a way that it was now fully inclusive of what was before the limit of your consciousness.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
before the limit of your consciousness is
Yeah.
now in here, and now your consciousness is out here.
Yeah.
So you're able to literally watch your voluntary process of action, whereas
Mm.
before you couldn't watch it, you just
Yeah.
participated in it, you just did it, and now your consciousness can sit back and view it, be like, oh my god, that's an automatic process that just happened. That's now included. Yes, so there's something about the transformations of consciousness that you're talking about that is like elevated. It's expansive in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And how could you say that's a byproduct of evolution? I mean, it's just so much more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I would say that humans are so complex beyond animals that the ability to become more conscious is another level beyond human,
Mm.
even though it's part of being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's sort of and how is it more complex? Because the ability to make art can come out of a person instinctively. It's sort of almost inborn. I mean, you see children doing. I see activities in 5 or 6 year old children that are artistic,
Hmm.
that they do almost by instinct, or perhaps because they're in a cultural environment. It's brought out of them, but they don't have to develop it or work on it at that level, at that age.
Yeah.
But and then can get much more complex than that, of course. But in addition to that, we have invisible abilities that if we work on them, turn out to be a possibility, but we didn't even know it until we developed them. Like that one,
like that one.
like becoming more conscious in your actions.
Yeah.
And what do you describe that? That's so non-mechanical and so subtle and so, you know, I don't know how to put it, but
Like
it's so subtle
unexpected.
that it has to be worked on at a personal level to even be seen and developed.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
conscious level.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because those transformations, those expansions, the synergies, the new forms that arise, they arise because you're employing, just like you said, these hidden abilities. Like you're well, not even really the hidden abilities. You're employing things that you have. It's like you're employing the ability to direct what you attend to, for instance. You're employing your ability to realize when you've strayed from what you've set out to do,
Mm.
etc. You're employing things that you already have, just like
Yeah,
like a
often, yeah.
body that's formed of cells. Like a body, like cells were lying around, they were doing what they did. It's like almost like there's these ingredients lying around that you sort of organize in a certain way, and poof, like a transformation can happen. So these
Yeah,
new things, yeah.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like develop, yeah, like utilizing, known existing faculties.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, known. Yeah, you said it a lot better than me. It's you're utilizing available faculties.
yeah,
You're just sort of using them intelligently, and
yeah,
maybe to solve a problem that you already have that you don't know that's going to lead to transformations.
right.
You know?
Yeah, and then when we realize certain abilities, um, they seem so unpredictable that we say, well, how would we know? Well, we often think, well, because they're not predictable, they're hidden, and they could only be accessed through esoteric means.
Mm,
It's a kind of knowledge available only to a select few,
right.
and I understand that, but that tends to make it. But then we tend to place the ability onto some person who has some special knowledge. So I read
Yeah.
recently that Gurdjieff was a spiritual teacher. When he wrote his sort of master work on his view of human consciousness, he it was sort of a literary invention, but he argued that the abilities that were available to humans were told to him through a kind of a deity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we often hear that
Yeah.
only a deity or a higher being could give you the knowledge, because how else would you acquire it? How would you even know it's there?
Mm-hmm.
You could say the same. I mean, you could ask the same question. How do you know it's there about art? How do you know when you're 15 years old that you might be able to sing like an opera singer
Yeah.
if you trained? How would you know at 15 that maybe, or at 6, that you'd be able to do mathematics, higher math?
Mm,
You wouldn't know. These are all unpredictable. Some of them become culturally known, culturally transmissible. Some of them become common knowledge, but much of it isn't.
yeah.
Well, we don't really know our full range of abilities. We don't know what's really there.
Right.
But the fact that we don't know doesn't mean that it must therefore belong to some outside source. I'm not sure.
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting to think of those, like you said, those notions of outside sources as like literary devices or metaphors or something like this.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
uh, you know, it's sort of outside of ourselves, and then we incorporate it through the transformations or something like that. But if it somehow gets understood that those are only available because of a literal outside force, then of course that leads to authoritarianism. It leads to the worst sort of religious dogma, the worst sort
Cult,
of priesthoods and all that
yeah,
business.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Like these
Yeah,
are, yeah.
yeah, and I want to see it go the other way, becoming more educationally available.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And and so it's simultaneously bringing things down to earth. Like education is, it's such a familiar word for so many of us. We go to school, we get educated. And so
yeah,
bringing it down to the level of education, but at the same time, which you said before, bringing the full meaning of the word education out.
yeah.
Like,
Elevate.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
bringing it to
what it means.
education, but elevating education at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and I mean, education could easily devolve into authoritarian. How often do we see teachers, talking down to students as if they know so much more? But meanwhile, a student could be gifted and completely, and have the potential to completely put the teacher to shame.
right,
So why would you put the same with children? I mean, there are kids who are 6 or 7 years old who possess some gifts that it makes a parental or educational figure look silly when they're putting the child down or acting like, well, I know and I'm going to teach you.
right,
Well, maybe you know, maybe you can teach, but sometimes we have to recognize the potential in the child as being so unpredictable and high level. And
absolutely, absolutely.
so we have to not just think of education as fixed and talking down to kids, but the other way around, where we need to elevate the potential of the human being
Yeah,
and our recognition of that potential, so that education becomes more, open and more
yeah, yeah, yeah,
inclusive.
yeah. More open, more inclusive, more truly transformational, more recognizing of potential, and more mysterious because we don't really like what's the limit, like just
Yeah,
consciousness is the most transformational, like what's the limit
yeah,
there, like that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sort of an amazing thing to think about. We talk about how higher mathematics 2,500 years ago, at least in our version of our culture, like it was the province of a very, very small, almost like a cult.
yeah, yeah,
About
absolutely.
the Pythagoreans, they were literally killing each other over the existence of irrational numbers and things like this. So like uh and then the Romans were doing a high level math, and they had geometry, but their particular numeric system made it such that like it was difficult for them to do numerical operations.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it took another culture, the Arabic culture, to figure out the right kind of numerals to make mathematics easier to deal with in the mind. And then it brought mathematics down to I don't know, more people have it available. More people have the ability to learn geometry, and like God, like algebra. That was
oh
like
yeah,
a mind blowing development. And now it's being taught to people who are in sixth or seventh grade. So like the transformations of consciousness. I mean, it's almost similar. I
yeah,
mean,
of course, yeah, absolutely.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
yeah, it might in the same, and not it's not just democratized; it's also just becoming almost part of our language. I mean,
Yeah,
same with the ability to read or to use grammar. I mean, once upon a time, to put words together so that they became coherent thoughts,
mhm.
or to read in the way we read today, and we could read 20 pages in a few minutes. I mean, that's incredibly advanced.
Yeah,
It would have been some cutting edge ability
mhm.
a few thousand years ago for someone to be able to read continuously and think and make the words transparent in your mind because you're reading so quickly. Now every kid can do that by 6 years old. I mean, that's an advancement that we have no idea of the potential to go beyond that. Even
Yeah,
with
yeah,
consciousness, maybe the ability to quiet the mind will be just an everyday ability at some point.
yeah,
And so when someone says to me, well, but it takes so much work to do those things. Yeah, but that's because we're still kind of in the ice age.
yeah. Right, right.
Instead of complaining about the work that's involved, we should be thinking ahead about what's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do we set up the conditions so that you know, it's I don't want to say easier. but like, how do we set up the conditions such that this is more available
Yeah.
and yeah,
Not
yeah,
so rarefied. Yeah.
not so rarefied, not so
Yeah.
rarefied. Because yeah, both democratizing education, but also, if we really knew the potential, if we knew the importance and the value. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting having, gotten to this point of the conversation from evolution and levels of being. Like, yeah, this is an interesting thing. And how did you how did you start thinking about this topic? You know?
I wonder, James. We were talking about it earlier, and I think part of it was I think part of it was when I was having experiences of being aware at a more conscious level, like quieting the mind and thinking about what that meant. I thought that I at the same that was part of my study of the body.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about the evolution of human beings and our upright posture and the fact that we could, think about this machine and how we use it.
Hmm.
Uh, but then becoming aware at a higher level as part of that, I thought, well, yeah, the body evolved, the human being evolved as part of an evolutionary process, in particularly in primates, leading to
Yeah.
humans. But the awareness couldn't be explained by the normal evolutionary theories. So I think along with my recognition of the possibility of being aware, I was challenging in myself. I was questioning the notion of how we had evolved.
Mm.
I said at the
Yeah.
same time, I agree that we've evolved from former common ancestors of other primates. I thought at the same time, I don't think that's explaining everything that's happening in humans.
Hmm.
If these new qualities are coming about that can't be explained by those former,
Yeah.
so I thought evolution isn't just pushing from behind. It life is building up,
Yeah.
and that's I think where my initial thoughts on this came from.
Yeah. Building up, and like your experiences working on your own, like you said, quieting the mind, or like the stage of conscious control that you speak about in other places. Like, this was a new and unexpected
Yeah,
vista from which you were now viewing things. Like,
yeah,
what I was doing work and I was trying to solve a problem, and now I've got my mind is expanded. What was that? What's the
yeah,
significance of that? Like, not only is this very interesting and cool and gratifying, and I seem to have solved a problem, but what is this? Like,
yeah,
this, how do I understand the significance of this and the meaning of this outside of my own personal experience?
yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a good, that's a really important question because, we're sometimes so busy looking at the method we're using or the benefits of the method we're applying that we're forgetting to look at this as a potential and a human potential that is itself more important than our personal attainment or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems to me to be true about humans in general, that we tend to celebrate the fact that a Beethoven can write, the Moonlight Sonata,
Hmm.
but we aren't as clear about the fact that any child making music at all is such an incredible,
Yeah.
remarkable, mysterious thing.
Yeah.
And
Quite
we tend to
unbelievable.
celebrate the outcome and forget and to overlook the actual faculty that leads to the outcome,
Yeah.
which we've kind of glossed over as if these are just sort of, um, just happenstance abilities of, clever primate humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering where, we put this in our list of topics here.
Mhm.
Are we following up on this, James? Do you remember?
Well, yeah,
Uh,
there's so in a few weeks or a few episodes, we'll be talking about evolution and the synergy of living forms, which is quite similar, but it's
yeah,
it's your notion for instance, if listeners want to think about this, like you were just talking about the evolution of human upright posture,
Mm.
and there's the normal way of looking at this, which is that human upright posture is quite a compromise. It's actually kind of cobbled together. It's wobbly. I know that there's like this, like a, like what do they say, like a light bulb on top of a toothpick or something like that.
Yeah.
It seems totally imbalanced and wrong, and like the knees are a terrible design. But then like through the process of education, you can actually see the functional design. You can actually experience for yourself the functional design of the postural mechanism, and you're like, wait a minute, this was totally wrong. This is actually a quite
Yeah.
amazing form, and it seems kind of perfect in a way. As much as anything could be perfect, but like this is a this human upright posture is something different and new and synergetic and
Yeah.
transformational.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it seems like nature in a way was looking for it, in like just sort of, yeah, like, and it's a way of looking at how nature finds useful forms
Yeah.
with which to locomote organisms, and
Yeah.
those forms are found kind of by accident sometimes, but then they kind of seem to be looked for, like the bird wing, or the
Yeah.
design of a fish going through water, or four-footed locomotion, or now two-footed locomotion, but then fully human upright posture.
Yeah.
So you've got a whole view of this. This is a synergy of living forms and how
Okay.
it
That.
augments the view of evolution. And it's similar here about evolution on levels of being.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great topic. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
upright posture is, we say, oh, it's a modification of an earlier form where we have a lumbar spine, that, lumbar curve that had to be put into the, added to the four. It's a modification of a four-footed design that enabled upright posture. But wow, it's really, you see the terminology kind of like jury rigged. The whole thing
Yeah.
is jury rigged to get us upright. How gangly and stupid. The
Yeah.
upright human posture is the single most remarkable, fantastic, unpredictable, complex architectural form in the known universe.
Yeah.
So for someone to say that it's simply a jury-rigged mess is absurd.
Mm-hmm.
As if that's all it is like, well, you have a vulnerable lower back. Well, you might have a vulnerable lower back. You also have the ability to play violin, to run 26 miles, to climb a rock face, to thread a needle, all because of the upright design.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a synergetic, emergent property in evolution. That's a great
Yeah.
topic. We're doing that
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
time,
It's cool.
and
It's
we'll talk
cool. And it
about that.
has to do, it's a subset of this topic in a way,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
levels of being conversation, because your contention is that it's the human upright form that is the foundational factor in the transformation of consciousness,
yeah. I think
the
it's
later transformation of consciousness.
hugely important. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one to explain. And we'll talk about other animals. I mean, we see it throughout nature, incredible qualities and abilities, and
Yeah.
it's remarkable. And yeah, it's interesting to talk about what modifications happened to enable one animal to emerge from a former design, but that's not the only explanatory component that we need to
Yeah.
look at to make sense of what comes after
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
follows that.
And we'll
So we'll,
bring Aristotle again, because it's a more what's required here is a fuller view of causation or
yeah,
causality,
right,
not just from behind but from ahead, but not
yeah,
teleologic. Just
yeah,
causation is like as how it's been spoken about in the classical texts, and by interesting minds. So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like this is the view when we talk about education. You know, this is the context. I think it's super cool, and I look forward to having that conversation as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Ted, for another great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, James. Thanks, everyone.
Don't forget to sign up on. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's the way you say it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and find us on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone.